because if you're an overthinker, right? All the overthinkers in the room, lift your hands. Okay, if you're an overthinker, you're going to get on every subway. Because if the thought crosses your mind, even if you push it out of the way, you're going to process it to an extent. And can you imagine if you were trying to get to work in Brooklyn and you had 20 minutes to do it and your subway took 17, but you got on all the wrong subway lines before you got on your right one? Would you ever get to where you were going? The answer is no. And that's why it's so important. But if it became a natural thing, like Lee's saying, what if there is a new neural pathway created where you don't have to think, I must perish this thought, or I am not thinking about this, but your mind automatically knows. That goes directly in opposition to what I believe according to the word about myself. You're like, well, that's going to take 10 seconds to say. Your brain does that in a nanosecond. Your brain thinks 50,000 things before you can say one thing. And so when we automate it in the way that she has put in this program, you don't have to say, I rebuke that thought. You don't even have to say that. It rebukes itself. It doesn't even have space in your brain. Because as the CEO of your own operating system, you've already X'd that out of your programming. Does that make sense? Well, you can't answer me, but I'm just telling you it makes sense. Okay, but I'm loving all of this. I want to talk to Dr. Char about, she says, and the way she writes it in her notes is, don't believe everything you hear. She doesn't say everything. She says everything. Don't believe everything you think. I'm not even saying that right. My lips weren't formed to move in that direction, but all these girls here can say everything. So tell us what you mean by the don't believe. I mean, I know on a ground level, but what do you mean?
When you get 60,000 thoughts, at least 2-3 a second, when you get that many thoughts a day, then you may be overwhelmed.
You think?
But if you believe everything you think.
See how she said it? Say it again.
If you believe everything you think. I do it really well, don't I?
You do. Like it's just like it's a whole neural pathway you have made about saying that. You don't have to think about it.
You know why? It's automated.
Yes.
Right. There you go. What a good example.
Yeah,
it's
because
automated.
I've got to think about it. She doesn't.
And so if you think about everything you think, then you're going to be overwhelmed. But once you set the CEO in your life as you, do you see how you start taking a little bit of responsibility, but not, it's a privilege as well. It's a privilege, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility, but once you know it, you know it. You don't unknow it again. And once you know it, then you start paying attention to thoughts that you want and ignoring thoughts you don't. Do you know we wouldn't have an Apple computer today if Steve Jobs just ignored the thought about a computer? Because in 24 hours it dissipates. If you don't do anything with the thought, in 24 hours it's gone. And as those thoughts dissipate, all you have to do, I teach children all the time, roll the window down and throw that thought out. Now, sometimes you have to give it attention in order to ignore it. But sometimes when you understand it correctly, you just have to ignore it. Now, if you want some part of that thought, sometimes you can just realign it with what you believe. But once you've made a non-negotiable decision, see, you know what aligns with it and what don't. But the biggest problem is we don't make the decision. But once you make a decision, and then every thought that comes by that doesn't align with that, ignore it, it's gone. Right. Throw it out the window, do whatever you have to. But then align with only the ones that fit with that belief.
That's so the scripture, by the way. That is all about taking every thought captive. Right. And you're not even taking the time to catch it. Because your spirit, according to the word of God, will train itself to capture every thought that exalts itself against the word of God in you. Yeah. That is big and bold. So that's when the enemy comes to tell you that you are worthless, or you are never going to succeed, or you're never going to fill in the blank, whatever that is. If that thought is not aligned with the belief that God has spoken over you, then automatically it gets pushed out and it's captured, it's gone, and it's not a part of who you are. It's not a part of your belief system.
Then how do you help the enemy? How do you help the enemy? How do you help the enemy when thoughts come by?
You agree with them.
How do you agree with them?
You believe them.
How do you believe them? From the abundance of the heart, your mouth speaks. So if you want to ignore a thought that doesn't align with your non-negotiable decision, what do?
Shut up about it.
Throw it out the window. Ignore it. That's all. That's how simple it is. You do nothing with the thought.
I just want to testify. How many times have you opened your mouth and ruined everything? Slow clap right now. Because, no, I mean, really. Because if you think it, right, about somebody especially, and never say it, and you do not bring up that venom, or you do not bring up that hurt.
Or especially if there's emotion behind it. Because emotion is the steam, right?
Yeah.
Makes it rise to
By
the
the
top.
time that cover blows off, it's unfixable.
Right.
But
And that emotion is that key. Those are the practicing transformation tools, because you're the boss of you. You're the boss of your feelings. So if you hurt my feelings and you told me, honey, when did you gain that weight? I can smile if we're on camera. I can smile. And I can say, you didn't offend me. Because I know the word says for me not to be offended. But if there's something inside there that is already working against my non-negotiable, then I need to be able to practice. We say practice what we preach, but we need to be able to practice getting the thoughts, ignoring the thoughts, first of all, that says, hit her. I can ignore that thought, and I can also, from the abundance of my heart, say the right thing. But my feelings are affected and impacted. You ready? I'm the boss of me. I can feel hurt, I can feel sad, and I can feel ugly. But I don't have to do anything with that. I'm the boss of me. And when I know that I'm the CEO of my life, it's not that hard when you start learning the steps. But it is easier with a system where you have just a few steps to walk through. But I can be the boss of that emotion. Who says we have to numb down our feelings? Why do we always want to get rid of the feelings? Feelings supposed to inform us that something's wrong.
Absolutely.
Just because I don't respect feelings that much, I guess, because feelings that I don't like have just informed me about something that now I can be the CEO of and overcome.
But we live in a world where feelings trump everything else. That's why offense has become such an awful, I don't even know what it is. It's a weapon. The offense has been a weapon, but what you're saying now is take the weight off the feeling because you are in charge of those feelings.
Be the boss of them.
So how can you talk to, we got some young ladies right here who are like googly-eyed listening to you right now. How do you take charge of that hurt feeling when the person who just told you what you unfortunately might believe about yourself already, something that's hurtful? How do you ignore that? How do you take charge of that feeling?
Okay, so the thought says, hit her. Well, no, somebody's seeing me. I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to hit her. So I ignore that thought. But then the words, I keep myself from saying, well, you're not so cute yourself. So I keep myself from the words, but then there's the feelings. What do I do with the feelings? I say, okay, I feel like a bag of potato chips. That's what I feel like going and getting. That hurt my feelings. She had no right doing that. No, she didn't. It worked. I felt like poop. But what I did was, okay, you little sad feeling, you sit there 10 minutes. Right. I'm going to go for my walk that I already had scheduled today, and I'm going to be the boss of me. I'm going to make wise choices for me, not for you, little sister. And I'm going to be that same size, look that same way when I come back, but I'm going to keep doing what I know to do because I'm the boss of me. I've made a non-negotiable decision, and I'm going to practice transformation until it's automated in my spirit. And when that's automated inside me, then you're going to say that, and it's not going to impact me at all. And I know that can happen. I know who I am, what I look like sitting here between these gals, but I know who I am. And I'm not offended, I even understand when somebody thinks something that used to have hurt me. I can still be hurt, but I still know what to do about it because I am the boss of me. It will not let me now, that knowledge will not let me stop working on being my best me. And therefore, I don't help the enemy fight me. I don't help him fight against God.
That's so good. That's so good. So good. How many of us are helping Satan fight us? How many of us are giving the enemy a hand in taking us down? What a revelation, really. Pastors, you guys have anything to add? I mean, my mind has so much to process right now. I'm like, I got to go back and watch this and think through all of these things. And
well, I think for so long, you know, the topic of mental health and anxiety and all these things have been so taboo in the church. So one, I just love that we're like bringing this, right, like in this sort of platform. But as I'm listening to you, and I know some of you might be processing this as well, when Dr. Char is saying, you know, I'm the boss of me, it doesn't make God any less God. Absolutely. Because the scripture that's coming to my mind is where Christ calls us co-laborers. We are co-laborers, and so therefore we are responsible to discover and to seek out the tools that we need to be successful in these areas of mental transformation. And we do have to be proactive. And I just feel like this program, this knowledge, this insight and this revelation is just tools that we can now access so that we can be the boss. And I mean, that in of itself is just so boss. Like, it is so like, and it is, we have to fight this good fight, right? We can't forget that we are part of this. We can't just be consumed by everything, but these sorts of programs and vocalizing, look, this is a reality that we all face. Wherever our faith lies, we are all going to struggle with these things, but the difference is that we have a choice. Today we have a choice. We can say, absolutely, I can be the boss of me. Right. And I think so many people feel helpless. Today, none of us are helpless. Like, if you're watching this right now, no one's helpless. I just feel like we're out of excuses at this point, and we can boss up. We can, and we need to. I mean, it's not just a slogan, right? It's really applicable, like, even in our walk. We've got to fight this good fight, you know, and we need the tools to do it. So I'm just excited about it.
We have learned helplessness in the church too long. Yeah. We want to come to God and Him clean it up and send us out. And He is supernatural. I don't know. I love feelings. I feel His presence now. I love feelings, but I know He gave me a free will. He gave me the choice to do what I want to do with those feelings. I choose to be the best I can do. So when His presence walks into the space, I never not know that it's there. And yet when I am living stressed and full of anxiety and worry, He could come in. He could come in on top of me, and sometimes me not recognizing. But I can't not know Him. And that's what He wants. And that's the boss. That's the boss he wants us to be. He wants us to be he wants us to be so in tune with him that his word. Paul felt guilty. Paul felt so guilty. He killed people. He murdered people. He had to watch them die. He probably saw their families suffer. He didn't deny that guilt. He documented it. But yet somewhere in prison, a city he wanted to go, he was in prison. And from there, he said there's no condemnation. Why? Because there was the law that couldn't restore us. And then there was Jesus that restored us. Now we can feel guilty. We can know we're guilty and not rub off the rough edges just so we can live with that story and tell somebody so we don't look quite so bad. Are you kidding me? Feel the guilt and live from the no condemnation. But instead, sometimes when we have the anxiety or we have stress, we're living of the spiritual side, the reflexes when we're with our family and when His presence is here. But we're living, we flip over here and living out of the law in other times. We don't have to. When we make non-negotiable decisions, that's word-based. And when we become that boss of us and allow Him to lead us with our emotions and our words.
So good.
Preach. That's good.
Yeah, so good.
I love feelings too. I do, and even the bad ones. That's how I think. When I say I love the bad ones, it doesn't mean that I like to feel sad, but I understand that all those are part of
They inform us.
Yes, they're there to inform us, and God put that ability in us to be able to feel those things. Well, I feel, but today, if you're listening and you're in that desperate place, because I've come across in especially over the last year or so, a lot of people who feel they go so quickly from anger into desperation, or from sadness into hopelessness. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it used to take a lot more to get us to the edge. But we have a generation that's getting to the edge way too fast, or just putting so much stock into what I feel instead of what I know and what God has said about me, that we're losing the ability to win and to be the boss that God called us to be out of our own minds. But today, that's why these women are here. That's why we are here, to make sure that those of you who are watching, we'll have to divide this into 3 different sessions because there's so much here that they can talk to you through. And none of these women here have told you their stories. You don't know what their backgrounds look like, but I can testify to you that none of them have had an easy life. None of them have come up on the right side of the train tracks with lots of, resources, or if they had resources, they had the perfect family life. None of that happened in these situations, but yet God has put them in places where they can influence people, where they can talk, where I say they, but I mean all of us, where we can sit here and tell you that there is not just hope, but there is victory in the space of your mind, in your thought life, in control of your anxiety. I don't know if any of you can testify. Maybe sis, you can start, but I remember a time in my life where anxiety was eating me alive. It really was, and sometimes I remember one night just curling up into a fetal position on the floor of my bedroom, because I didn't want to lift my head up. I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to live, if that made sense. I didn't want to face what the next day had to bring me. And I remember feeling so desperate and begging God to come. And now I'm getting choked up, but not because I remember why. I get choked up when I think of myself being that low, because it is not a part of my story anymore. And when I go back and think about the things that were able to put me into that position, I know that God has pulled me out and put me in a place where those things do not affect me that way anymore. And it is because I changed my belief.
Absolutely.
And it is because I had a non-negotiable. I know this is why I am living. I am living, and I have to be strong for this reason. And I know what my future is in Christ. And there are things that God has taught me. And Dr. Char, I'm telling you, has held my hand and pulled me through some of those darkest nights, which is why I know that a program like the one she's developed is going to help. It can teach you these things to be able to break free from the chains and break free from what the enemy's trying to do to you. Sis, you want to?
Yes, absolutely. While you were talking, I felt, one of the first things that comes to mind was, what Dr. Char has essentially created, right? Is she's created, as you had started the program with, I want to create mental health. For so long, I'm sure you've heard mental health and you've thought something negative about the term.
Thought mental illness.
Yes. Ooh, we can't talk about that. Ooh, let's just sweep that under the rug. I think what has become so beautiful living in this era of time is that you have professionals who can give women the help that they need to know that there is an option other than, oh, geez, I don't have to recreate what came down my generational bloodline. Not only that, but the second thing that while you were speaking, Pastor Sharo, was that essentially by adapting yourself to the operational system and letting this overtake your entire thought process, your 90% as well as your 10%, ladies, don't you see it this way, that you are becoming that person that you needed back whenever you were that person that was on the floor and couldn't lift your head up? So know that it's so mind-blowing to know that God has allowed a specific time right now to where, ladies, you have this right at the cusp to where all you have to do is just say, yes, I'm here, sign me up. How do I do it? Because this old system, this old thought process, what I have seen before me, where I have seen myself before, I've seen the excess of it, I've seen the result of it, and that really doesn't work for me. And not only that, but it doesn't work for my kids because, ladies, I know you can attest to this. I never want my kids to become what I had to survive through. Ever. I don't want them to ever feel like they weren't worthy, like they weren't ever loved in the right way, like they weren't the most significant all the things that females that we have overcome, being females, being women, overcoming anxieties in life. God is allowing this program to really be available to us so that we can say, it's time for us now to be the women that we needed. Not only that, but there's a whole generation that's coming behind us, and they're going to have a new, different way. Because let's face it, social media is not cutting it. Hollywood is not cutting it. And so this right here, this will be the answer, I believe, to not only for females, but churches, and just completely destigmatizing what we have learned mental health has been.
So we have a different approach to the whole mental health discussion. What was taboo in the 70s and the 80s, we've realized that it grew up a sick generation, a generation that had such low self-esteem. We're reaping the benefits now of women and men who don't know who they are, and they're identityless. So having this discussion now, if it means we have stronger daughters and stronger granddaughters and stronger sons, then it's worth having this discussion. Mom, even if you're listening to me and you don't feel it's for you, do you know what your girl's going through? Mm-hmm. Do you know what your son is going through? Because I'm telling you, they're going through something. And we may be in our mind space so much that we don't even recognize it. Dr. Shar, I want to hit on one more thing that you talked to me about, which is the way that we speak to ourselves. And can you tell us about those words that build up and how that they can implement that in their lives?
Sure. Words speak positive or negative to us, and quite honestly, positive affirmations are better than negative ones. But our Christianity, our spiritual life, we understand that we should say what God says about us. We understand it's not Pollyanna. It's what the Word says, how we should speak to us and what we should do. But not just that, science agrees that when you say, I am capable, you say something positive, it does something to your brain. It literally does something to that largest, biggest thing that was ever invented and given to us. And we're made in His image, and that brain was given to us to be the boss of. And the words created by our mouths, it either separates our amygdala from the prefrontal cortex and keeps us from making good logical decisions, or it connects up and we can be calm and be the best we can be. Now, science agrees with the word. Who are we to stand against that? And that means that if you're not trying to be Pollyanna and you're not just trying to be positive, but you want to be the best you should be all you can be, then it just stands to good reason to throw away the things that is putting you down, is not building you up. It's not building up the Father. It's not building up your family. And for me personally, I can tell you I use humor a lot of times to put me down when what I'm doing is separating my amygdala and my prefrontal cortex. I've had to learn through the years, even those things embedded in my brain, those beliefs that if I joke about myself, then that makes me feel better before you get the chance to make the comment. Now, that's all subconscious. I don't sit and think that through, but once I understood that's what I was doing, it helps me just do this. Just do this. When words want to come that's demeaning, even if it's joking and makes you more comfortable because that's how you've learned to sit in your environment, it helps the enemy. It doesn't help God. And the God in you is what you want to grow up. The God in you is who you want to grow.
Ladies, do you have any of those, any of that self-talk that you've had to switch and change about yourself that has made a difference for you?
Yeah, I mean, this for me is just, I wouldn't say it out loud, but I will tell you, it was the things I would say about myself and my circumstance in my mind. Because I felt like the position that I was in, right, being a leader, being a mother, being responsible, I couldn't say these things out loud or it would be like a shame unto myself. But I would think it in my head. And I feel like it was maybe just as damaging because it was just sitting in there. And I think, when I really understood that, like, again, and I just feel like we keep coming, I know I keep coming back to this as I'm listening to everything. It's that choice, that decision that I realized that I had, like, I don't need to serve this declaration I'm making inside myself. I don't need to continue to do that. But I think there is a silent declaration, that we might be speaking things inwardly and we're not saying it out because we don't want to do to our kids, right? We don't want to do the wrong things to our kids. We're not going to say it out my mouth, but I'm gonna say it.
It's saying it. It's just like a whisper.
Yeah.
Because you're just saying it. You're the only one hearing it.
Yes.
Which is even worse sometimes because then it self-implodes and then it becomes toxic because you hold on to it longer, thinking that you're not doing any harm, but really you're doing all the harm to yourself.
Do you hear that? Not saying it is just like a whisper because you're the only one hearing it. So it's like you said it. So if you keep living in that thought, that negative self-talk about yourself, and I mean, sometimes it's learned because somebody said it to us, and instead of skipping that train and say, miss me with that thought, you just get on that and keep replaying those words in your mind over and over and over until, like Pastor Danielle said, it becomes toxic and infectious in your life. But really, when was the last time you were kind to you? When was the last time when you took a thought captive or the enemy came to lie to you, or somebody else came to tell you something or put a thought in your mind. Usually I don't need anybody to put me down. I can do a good job all by myself.
I understand.
Right?
Isn't that so?
It is so. And so, but when those thoughts come, when was the last time you said, wait a minute, nope, that's really not me? I do that out loud. Sometimes people think I'm nuts because I will talk to myself, because I've decided and I have recognized who I am. So you can come, or my thoughts can come and try to say to me, this is who you are. And I say, I don't identify with that. That is absolutely not who I am. And I am, and I'll remind myself of who myself is. And that is, like Dr. Char said, it's not something I have to think about doing anymore. It just happens. When the enemy comes to say, you're nervous, but I'm not a nervous person. Oops. You're terrified. Actually, no. I'm just excited. I'm not terrified. I'm excited. And I've taught you girls how to do that and change your mind about what your mind is saying, because you are the CEO. Escape. It's a button. Push it. Get out of it. Lee, when we had our online summit, you saw, well, we all saw all your sessions, right? Everybody saw these sessions, but Lee particularly mentioned Dr. Char's session, and tell us what happened.
Well, let me first say that I love smart women, and this woman right here is just brilliant. You are a brilliant woman of God, and I've always been very passionate, especially, with all that I've been through in my past with trauma and going through years of therapy and doing all these things and being in leadership in the church. I've always been a firm believer, and I'm very passionate that neuroscience can reveal the glory of God, that the two are not separate. So there's neuroscience, and then there are biblical principles that go hand in hand. And what I love most, because I'm very interested in the brain and the way the brain works, when I heard you speak on the virtual summit, it was like my antennas just went up because it was, when you were speaking, it was revealing in such a relevant, connectable way how to identify what I was going through without feeling bad about myself, without feeling like I had so much more work to do, if that makes sense. It's like, when you, we were talking about weight earlier, when you look at yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I know I have all this weight to lose. And then, you got somebody just say, well, you got to do this and this and this. And then afterwards you just walk away and you're like, forget it. I don't want to do any of that. I just don't want to do any of it. But the things what can feel so insurmountable, especially when it comes to issues of anxiety and fear. And I think, again, it's all part of our daily lives. When I heard you just, the way you explain things and broke them down, again, in such a relevant, relatable, and applicable way. And I'm a firm believer that we can note, what the problems are, and then, a good teacher will break it down. You ever had a good professor? You ever had, a good pastor, can break it down in a way that's so easily, I think the word is entreatable, right? You can grab it, and you literally, without even having to practice it, you almost feel like, oh, I've applied that by just listening to it, and then it makes you feel like, oh, I can do this. And that's what you want. You need somebody to train you and coach you. And this was all in the short session that you had, and I just thought to myself, I want more. I'm like, I want more. I want to hear more. And really, it left me hanging, kind of, because I was just like, I want all of it. Give me all of it. We were short on time there, but I really appreciate how you're teaching it and how you're breaking something, again, that seems like a giant. You've kind of, and I say this in a respectable way, but you almost slayed the giant for us, and then said, here, come over here, I'll teach you how to do it too, but you've kind of done the hard work for it. So I just, for a woman like me who's got so much on her plate, I'm a mom of 5, I'm a pastor, I'm a wife, I have my own business, there's so many things I have. The fact that you can make this easy for somebody like me to be able to say, oh my gosh, I can be a conqueror and an overcomer in this area that feels so big is a big deal for me. So thank you. Thank you for who you are.
So good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And that's what she told me. So when I was having Dr. Char on the podcast, I was like, I have to have Pastor Lee come in as well, so she can tell you. She can tell you from the point of view of somebody who's been through more than any human I think I've ever met, in so many ways. And if you've heard her story, you know um, that for her to testify to that, it's such a big deal, Dr. Shar, a big deal. Sis, tell them about your experience with Dr. Shar.
I had a really significant conversation, and I don't know if you'll remember, but there's these words that you used with me, and while we were in session, and it was the girl that was who didn't know how to operate with her operational system. I definitely was not the boss. I wasn't the CEO of myself, my mind, my feelings, my emotions. I really had no idea, and every single thing. Think of it this way. If you can attest to it, being the person that as life happens, you just react to it and respond to it. You're like, oh my gosh, you feel like, I'm just going to lose my mind. We had a very, very significant conversation during one of our sessions. And after Dr. Shar graced me with permission to be able to share in a very vulnerable setting, confidentially, very sweetly you responded, oh, darling, you've just never had anybody put you on that list. And I said, what? I never heard in all of my years of, being a mom, pastor, friend, all the things, I've never heard anybody say that to me. You've never had anybody allow you to put yourself on that list. And I don't know if it's because, well, I do know. It's because I wasn't taught and I didn't understand that you absolutely can make that choice. And it was only until, do you remember that? I don't know if you would, but listen, that's been many, many, many moons ago, and that still sticks with me today, even today. Now it's all an afterthought. Now you've taught, I definitely can be, and I am the CEO of my emotions and feelings and thoughts and etc. And I definitely have learned how to put myself on that list. Good. To where not only do I feel worth putting myself on that list, allowing myself to go through these steps, these 4 steps, this operational system, I feel like I'm just as worthy as everybody else, that I'm called to serve and take care of and be there for, and all the things that women have to do. I'm just as worthy as everybody else to do that. And it's forever. It's changed forever.
So you're listening to all of us talk about how just being in session with Dr. Shar or just hearing her in one of our sessions has made such an impact on our lives and changed us. And maybe you, like she said, if you need 3 years of therapy, she's here for that. And her services can absolutely be available to you. She's a professional. She's amazing at what she does. But this program, she has designed a program that is going to make this kind of wisdom, information available to the masses, where you don't have to always be on a one-on-one, in a one-on-one counseling session with her every day, every week. And that's why I asked her to come on this program today, because I want all of my girls, I want all of you, wherever you are, even if you're not in the PG community and you're just watching this video blog, just scrolling through YouTube today and came across this, how to deal with your chronic anxiety. I want to tell you that the Lord might just be speaking to you and saying, look, I've provided this way for you. I've put a daughter here who has these tools that she's willing to share with you and to let you know that you can be the master of your mind. You can be the CEO of your own mind and your own brain and master your emotions, not only in yourself, but for the kingdom of God and for the people that you're going to serve, because they will all tell you when you find yourself in that place where you think correctly about yourself, you better serve everybody else. Mm-hmm. You are so much better for the people you love, for your family, for those in your congregation. You're so much better for them, and you're happier in who you are. Dr. Shar, I'm going to provide in the description of this video all the ways that you can access this amazing program. Do you want to just say anything about a little bit about how it works and what they can do, and then I will tell them the great news.
Well, you can go to drshar.org and get on a waiting list right now for that reversing anxiety class. There's free things on the website as well. You can see a workshop. You can take an anxiety audit for free. There's an ebook you can download for free about reversing anxiety.
So is the anxiety audit going to tell them whether they're anxious or not? Don't you want to know?
If you're susceptible to living a lifestyle with anxiety, that's what it's going to reveal to you.
That's interesting. I love those things that tell me what I already know about myself.
Well, but sometimes we need that validated.
No, we do,
We
and
think
that's
we do,
exactly
but
what
we
I- yeah.
sometimes we need that validated. But you can do that, and you certainly, of course, I made the program for you to have 9 weeks of practice and learning the steps, learning the history. But here's the deal. If you live in strife, which is the core, if you were to live in strife, live in the gap of comparison. If you compare yourself anywhere, honey, you are right there at the edge of getting in stress. And if you have stress unaddressed, it's going to lead to worry.
Dr. Char, you just said to them the most comparative society, and this is according to 100 bits of information, research that I've read very, very recently, actually, and studies that were done to show what is the #1 trigger of anxiety, especially in the 20-something. Just last week, I read a report that said among the 25 to 35-year-old women, that comparison is the #1 anxiety trigger, and that social media is the #1 trigger for that comparison of self. How do you tell us now that if you compare yourself, you're on the edge of having an anxious or stress-driven life, and I mean, who is listening to us that's not there though?
Well, when you understand that if you are anxious, worried, stress-filled, if you're living in strife. Now, she said I was smart, and I believe she's right.
Yeah.
And but it was one night in the bed that I sleep in now that I believe God spoke to me and said strife is the core of the problem.
Yes.
And if strife is the core of the problem, we're not going to get better by all of our training to manage symptoms. And so to get at the core, I don't have time to tell you today, but you can learn it through some programs or getting online for something free in mine. I don't care which way you do it. But if we learn the gap of comparison, I have my own personal stories with everything I do. And I do believe that my training has gotten me here. But I believe this is the part God Almighty spoke to me, myself, in my bedroom. And that is the core of this issue that we're talking about today is strife. And the core of strife is the gap of comparison. If you treat me really nice and I love you, but I don't know if I'm your really best friend. I don't know that for sure, and I'm having an issue with that. If I watch you be really nice to her, and I think, well, she didn't have that much time for me, so I am in a gap of comparison when I say, oh, I don't know, because she spent more time with her last week. I know that sounds silly, but I'm doing it for that purpose, something that you can relate to. However, if I don't compare that, and I just remember what time I've had with her, oh my God, how good it was. If it was just 10 minutes, and I don't compare that with something else, there's no room for strife, then there's no room for stress, there's no room for worry, and I won't have prolonged worry that she don't like me at all.
See, that was worth it. Throw in all my papers. Here you go. That was worth it. No, seriously, it was. And I think somebody just got set free. If you forget about comparing anything, that gap of comparison leads to strife, and that strife is the root of all your stress and all your anxiety. It is so good. Look, Her 9-week program, it's 9 weeks. That's the value of a 9-week program like the one she has developed. It's in the thousands and thousands of dollars. And I tried to sit down and put cost to it, not just her time, which is part of this program. You do get a little, there's an option to have some personal one-on-one conversation with Dr. Char, but all of it is online, drchar.org. There is a waiting list, okay, girls? And that doesn't mean you will wait forever and she likes other people more, so you won't get in.
No comparison.
No comparison. Just know that if you get on that list, there's a waiting list. You'll get information. She'll send all of this to you. But if you're a preacher girl and you want this program, after you go there and you explore a little bit and you learn a little bit about Dr. Char's program and you want to be a part of it, we have a really ridiculous discount that she's afforded to the preacher girls just for you. The cost of this kind of program, 9 weeks long, and you can go at your own pace or you can go at a suggested pace. I'm telling you, it's going to be amazing. It's under $1,000. And for that kind of counseling from a professional, it is amazing and so valuable. You'll pay hundreds of dollars just for one session with a professional like Dr. Char, but this program has been developed so as many people as possible can be a part of it. If you're interested, you can direct message me. I will put you straight in touch with Dr. Char's people. And also, if you would just like some questions answered, I have 3 women of God who are so brilliant. You can direct your questions to any of them in the Preacher Girl community, and I will make sure that they get your questions and they can respond to you. And I'm so praying and hoping that you've been as blessed as I've been in this session. It's been so good. I'm going to go out there and just put into practice everything all at once. And I really feel like I know these things, but I just want to make them so new in my spirit again. Once again, I want to thank you guys. Thank you, Pastor Danielle. You've had such a long day, but here you are looking cute and sitting here to talk to my girls. Lee, thank you for driving all the way from a state away just to be here for the Preacher Girls. She is not just a friend. She's a frister. She's a friend sister to me, and I thank God for her. Sissy's actually literal family. This one's adopted family. That's a story of life, isn't it? And then Dr. Char, my longtime friend. We've known each other for almost 2 decades. Do you know that? That is a long time, and she has been such a resource, such a blessing, that it's been such an honor to have such an esteemed panel of beauties in my church today. Girls, I love you so much. And don't you ever forget that if God called you, it could be as one of these things. Amazing things. No one can uncall you, and you don't need a pulpit. You just need a message. I love you. Bye. Say bye.